Hey, Marty.
As always, we have chosen to invite our extensive viewership into behind-the-scenes process by which John and Marty planned this podcast.
Right.
So,
yeah. So what the hell are we going to do today? What are we going to talk about?
You know, one thing that I was talking about with our colleague today, we've talked about it a lot, but I don't think it's something we can emphasize enough, and that is the role of emotion in healing.
You just froze for about 5 seconds.
Okay. I said, talk about the role of emotion in healing.
Wow. Yeah.
So one of the things that I think you and I have talked about this a little bit, but maybe not, is what something I've come to see in my own process over the last couple of months is something that I call for lack of a better word, the substitute pain. And I think back to frame this, I think back to the work of John Sarno, the medical doctor who was working on lower back pain, and he came to understand that most lower back pain was a substitute for emotional trauma, that when we repress trauma in our childhood, as you've said, that pain has to go somewhere. That trauma has to go somewhere if it is not allowed to complete through healing.
Right.
And so what he discovered is that oftentimes lower back pain is just, in essence, a substitute for the pain that we can't really allow ourselves to feel, that original trauma of separation, of rejection, of abandonment. And then later in his life, he went on to suggest that all chronic illnesses are substitutes for the original trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So what I've discovered in my life is, as I've started paying attention to this, is that I have indeed created substitute suffering. And the insight came to me, John, as I finally, in working with my childhood trauma healing therapist, I finally actually felt what may have been the original feeling, the original trauma, which I liken to a punch in the gut by somebody with a 300-pound guy with muscles punching me in the gut. And as I had that experience, I flashed on how a 2-year-old kid would simply say, I can't survive this, and would do everything he could to not ever experience that again. So I have a chronic disease. I have Crohn's disease, which ironically is a gut disease. And so I not try to make this too poetically beautiful, but that feeling of being punched in the gut, now I have a chronic gut disease. And just a thought. It's not something I would scientifically stand by yet, but my intuition says that this is all related.
Mm-hmm.
And that our addictions are all ways of creating a different kind of suffering to substitute for the one that we can't actually experience, because we created a defense that won't allow that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So just a thought to open the conversation, because is it an AA term? If we can't feel it, we can't heal it.
Right.
So the key to all of this psychospiritual growth is the willingness to feel And that's the accountability process, always starts with how am I feeling about whatever event or thought or problem that I'm confronting in my life. We move to the emotional body, because that's where the juice is. And so, and it's a challenge as we do a podcast, because I know I went through it online last week as you were helping me deal with some emotional energetics that I was feeling, and it was a substitute feeling, John. I was feeling gnarly and pissy, and but that wasn't what was really going on.
No.
And so, you helped me walk through it, helped me feel the truth of what was really going on, which then made me freed me up to ask for what I really wanted.
Right.
And then to seal that deal by setting an intention. And I set an intention, and I bring my desires into alignment with the higher power, who has the ability to turn that intention into a felt experience.
Yes. A realization, a manifestation of
Exactly.
that intent, instead of the buried intent, don't feel, or you'll die.
Right. Or feel this instead of this. Feel the less threatening and emotional energetic than this existential threatening feeling.
All of this, when you're talking, sounds malicious, or there's a like, this is what I'm doing. Actually, this is what we're covering up, what's happening. We're uncovering the process that has been happening all our lives, only we weren't aware of it.
Right.
So talking from in where we are, we can now look back at I'm going to say the antics of my life, and then see where they fit. They slip real together with family of origin trauma, this particular behavior, based on how I perceive that in my relationship to the people. So I would manifest this, somebody else would manifest something else, but they all slip in really, really smoothly together, although painfully. Conditions that you mentioned, and a lot of the conditions people have are chronic. They're not acute. So this has been a process that has been developing over many, many years. And then realizing it begins the path to relief. It's like, and that takes time. Sometimes it takes time. Other times it's miraculously just everything shifts and things go away. And that all happens. It takes time and things shift, and it all goes, some of it goes away. When we talk about our emotional capacity, and talk about it like it's, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but it's just in the language, it's something that's happening to us, or something that's what we say is unaware of, and yet our human experience has never been without it. And it's like, I use the example, it's like explaining water to fish. It's like we are constantly in this emotional state. We can deny it, we can minimize it, we can stuff it, we can do all kinds of things that negate it or dismiss it, and yet it's always going on. So it's like, I didn't want to be emotional because I had the word emotional mixed up with weak ass, something wrong, unstable, effeminate, and at worst unstable. And yet our emotionality is as human as any other aspect of our physicalness. We can see our physicalness, and as we see the physicalness, we're also seeing the emotionality of us, because we cannot move without some kind of biochemistry going on, some kind of electromagnetic circuitry or state, and so we say we're mind, body, spirit. And that's one of the, when I first heard the Trinity, you know, God, Son, Holy Ghost, it's three people and yet it's one. And they said, oh, it's a mystery. Well, no, it's not a mystery. It's a statement of truth. There's aspects or things that make up the human experience. It's all human. It's all part of us. It's all one of us. So when we talk about our emotions, it's like our body doesn't have to know how to figure it out. Our conditioning is frame of reference that we grew up in. There's no room to have the language to incorporate those three aspects of ourselves in one statement. So we break it up. Healing happens as the wounding happened to us. Mind, body, spirit, singular event that looks complicated and differentiated, and it's not. And the only way for us to talk about it is to take it apart and examine parts and what's just going on, what's that going on. When I'm speaking to you, it's all happening in the moment. So in ferreting this all out, we need to start someplace. So we're going to start with the breakdown of emotions into 8 basic emotions: happy, content, afraid, angry, hurt, sad, passionate, excited. Okay. And all those are going on at the same time. One may be prevalent, but it's all there. And if I say I'm angry and then had the time to explain all the different aspects in that one experience, we'd be talking for 2 hours, because my whole experience is incorporated in this moment, and how the conditionings incorporated in this moment, the awareness is now incorporated in this moment, and it's dynamic. And we're going to go back and talk about emotions. We're going to go back and talk about trauma, physical pain, emotional pain, and in this process, come to a deeper awareness of ourselves as human beings. Because even if we did know everything, there would be no words to say what that is to you.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Well, that's why, just parenthetically, or just as an aside, some of the best evocations of this unity experience that you're talking about show up in poetry and music.
Mm-hmm.
Because these are not directed at the thinking mind. These are ways to bypass the thinking mind without repressing it, but to sneak around it. Because it occurred to me.
I have a statement that I wrote down in my notes on my phone to try to express this unity in separation in me seeing you. And the statement is, I am, you am, we am, that am. Okay. And then I took a breath, and it's like, and 2 things were happening. That's a silly ass statement. Doesn't make any sense. It's out of context, not grammatically correct. And the feeling I had was there.
Right, because so let the English teachers say something here.
Yeah, yeah,
That was my first
yeah,
career.
yeah. Or the guy receiving the memo. It's
Yeah.
like,
But here's the deal. It's that I listen to that as poetry.
yes.
And so what I'm doing is I'm listening to you say this very simple, 4 sentences, 5 sentences,
Mhm.
is that the am is the central truth.
Yes.
And that the truth is there's only I being in the moment. That's all we have and that's this electromagnetic, biochemical, mental, intellectual, intuitive presence
Hmm.
that is not reducible to words because it is greater than the mind. Now, the words are the tool of the mind.
Right.
But as I am more than mind, then the communication methods have to transcend mere words.
Right.
And that, again, I think that what I learned from you in this accountability process is to really trust feeling
Hmm.
and to trust. This goes to the no blame, no judgment. So feelings don't blame or judge.
No.
Feelings just show up.
Yeah.
So it's only the mind that does blaming and judgment. But the mind is so powerful, as you were saying earlier, that it can repress, it can change, it can diminish, it can twist feeling, it can move it around in such a way that it reduces what the mind has decided is bad or uncomfortable or wrong or whatever.
Hmm.
So the work that accountability leads us through is to return to the ground. The feeling body is the ground. It's the vessel that is the ground of my being in time and space. Not necessarily the ground of my being in the I am sense that you were talking about, but it's the ground of my experience, planet Earth.
Yes.
And so I can never go wrong by returning to that. What I learned in my family of origin trauma is I can go wrong if I feel this.
Yes.
And what I discovered as I've worked with this is that because the emotional body comes first and the thinking body comes second, the emotional body actually is instructing the thinking body on what to think. And so that's why the mind seems to be an ally to the childhood trauma defense system, because it was trained to be that. The thinking came out of that emotional, energetic determination. And so we are retraining our minds. We're not retraining our bodies. That's the irony here.
Yes.
The body's
Yeah.
always going to tell us the truth. And now I'm retraining my mind to accept that truth.
To be in tune with, alignment with the information either stored in our body or coming through our body in the moment. And the goal is to differentiate between the things stored in our body that are no longer working, and then the information we have in the moment about who I am, where I am, what I want.
Right.
And then use that information, not use it, but listen to that information, and then decide, and simply put, either to move closer to a situation, person, place, or thing, or move away from a certain person, place, or thing. That's what the mind force is to engage us in our body in action. Buddha calls it right action. So he said he's got the Eightfold Path, and I don't know what the Eightfold's like. I think there's a softer version of the Ten Commandments. I don't know. So this guideline, and then he talks about right action, and what he means is healthy, dynamic, fluid life affirming action, not angel stuff or sainthood or, floating 2 feet off the ground, levitation, glowing. No, it's how I can maintain my proximity in whatever situation I find myself today, and do it well and with grace and gratitude, and create bonding and love between the individuals I choose to be with.
I'd like to share something that happened to me yesterday, as I think that will help illustrate this for those who might be watching this for the first time or fairly new to this. I was sitting outside in a park with a friend of mine who's part of our practice, part of our rusty nail practice. And we were talking about different aspects of what we've learned and how the process works. And it came up, I don't remember exactly how, but what came up was an intention I set for myself a while ago when I started to notice this really difficult paradox, which is that I really, really just want to be loved. And when someone offers to love me, I push it away. And so in doing the work, when I became aware of that, and it was with a particular person, so it wasn't kind of just a theoretical thing, but I was dealing with pushing somebody away that I really wanted to be my friend. And so we went through the tree, and the intention that I set was, I intend to feel the love from my friend as my friend would love me to feel it. I intend to feel love, and I've just turned that into a generic, I intend to feel love the way the people who love me would like me to feel it. So I'm sharing that with this person yesterday, and I look at her, and she's looking at me with this tender, loving eyes, and I felt a defense jump right up.
Mm-hmm.
And I started owning. I said, "Oh my God, I'm feeling like getting up and running away and pushing you away." And I felt this emotion well up in my body, and I started crying.
Mm-hmm.
And then, just because of the way this stuff works, so now I'm having a secondary reaction, to which is like, it's shameful for me to be crying in front of this person, and there's something wrong with me, and blah, blah, blah. So I just said that. I said, oh, and this is now what's also showing up. And so she said, well, what do you want? And I said, you know what I want is I want to stay with this. So I gave myself permission just to sit there and sob and feel ashamed and feel this, feel this kind of, don't feel this energy. All, like you were saying, it's all one thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
And to try to separate it out would take 2 hours, and it's not necessary. And so, and then she just gave me the space to just be with this. And so then I said, what's my intention? And I intend to feel the love that you're sending me the way you would like me to feel it. And I just was able then to just relax.
Mm-hmm.
Just to relax. And then in the aftermath of that, she said, your willingness to show me this part of you just makes me love you all the more.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's funny. It's like, yeah.
And then when she said that, I didn't feel the defense.
Right.
I said, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I share this with us because this is how this works. All of this stuff came up, and it's the program. It's the childhood trauma defense program kicking in as something was going on in my direct experience that was reminding that earlier part of me of a dangerous moment. And so the defense came up, as it always would. Only now, having done this practice, I'm aware that this is going on. I'm aware that when my mind is going, you shouldn't be feeling this. There's another awareness that's above all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's participating. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not, distant. It's not the angel 3 feet off the ground.
Right.
It's all me. It's all the am happening. And so in that moment, what I want to share with us is, in that moment, the purpose of the accountability practice was realized. I was able to be aware of all of it. And in that awareness, I was able to make a choice. And when I made that choice then became part of who I am.
Right.
So, and there's a little coda to this song. So later on in the evening, I get a text from somebody in my church inquiring as to, I went to the doctor's yesterday to get some readings on my glaucoma situation, and I get this text saying, "How did it go?" And the first thing that came to my mind was, this is a pain in the ass to have to answer this. It's like, and I just started laughing. It's like, there it is.
Mm-hmm.
There it is again. I'm not reading this as, I love you very much, I'm concerned about your health. I'm reading this as, warning, danger. Somebody's trying to reel you in.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I just had to start laughing. It's like, well, yeah, there it is. I love that little kid.
Mm-hmm. The feelings that I covered up in my experience of being dismissed, demeaned, diminished, ridiculed, abused, is the feeling of aliveness. So as an adult, if a feeling of aliveness came, that was my body's signal to shut down and avoid. And none of this was conscious. None of this was going on in my head. My head was in the story of, people are dangerous. People will stab you in the back. People will set you up. People will take advantage of you. People will make fun of you. And those were all the things that I was also guilty of doing, which was taking advantage of people, ridiculing people, hurting people, abusing people, dismissing people. I was actually doing what my parents did to me, to myself and the people around me. And inside that, I had created the enemy, which were attacking me. And I was innocent. I was guilt-free. I didn't do anything. And those are some of the terms I said to myself. I didn't do anything. Why do they treat me like that? I didn't make that happen. Why are they doing that? And that's the cry of the child. I didn't. And as a child, we don't have the wherewithal to say that. So it's very convoluted, complicated. Well, complicated post-traumatic stress syndrome is what Gabor Mate says is the problem to any issue you bring, whether it's emotional, mental, or physical. Complicated post-traumatic stress disorder that has not been relieved, that's stuck in your body.
Well, that's the chronic nature that you were talking about earlier.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. When you were first talking, I had this picture of a combat guy. I've never experienced this myself, close range, where this guy in maybe Iraq or Iran was hiding behind his Hummer and bullets were whizzing over his head. Now, based on how we're built emotionally, is to be aware of that and then survive. And he was trained to put that out of his mind and complete his task. So he did. And then he gets out of the service and he hears a loud noise as he's walking down the street, and he falls to the ground. He just goes right to the ground. And that's an obvious post-traumatic stress disorder combat veteran. And yet those things happen. The bullets flying across my head as a 2-year-old were the ridicules, the screaming, the yelling, people getting hurt. In my case, you know, blood all over. And me going in this frenetic place where I had no outlet, stuff, and then go away, either zone out or disassociate. And that was the best thing I could do. In fact, that's what I survived. And yet that survival technique method does not work in my adult life. It worked for me as a child. It kept me alive. This mechanism, reticular activating system, mixed into the survival mechanism, says when a frequency comes that's similar to this, do this, freeze, disassociate, go away. And that's what I did. Most of my responses in intimate and casual relationships in this feeling of aliveness was to freeze. And just, I got that 9-mile stare, and then that was either punished or ridiculed, or which compounded on and on we go. So we're sorting that out. We're sorting all that out in one exercise. Go to the end result. I freeze. Instead of judging it, I'm weak, or there's something wrong with me, or I'm stupid. Just say I freeze. And there's more to it, because it would be a situation where one of these behaviors of mine would come out: arrogant, entitled, mean, and I would own the behavior that came out of this trauma, own the behavior, because it's in alignment with the trauma. As soon as I say the truth about the behavior, no blame, no judgment, that would free my emotional body to examine the complete experience. Our emotional body, our midbrain, brainstem, reticular activating system, that part of our brain processes 4 million bits of information per second. So in 3 seconds, I've scanned 12 bits of information from my past experience and things that are happening in my current reality. That's a lot of information. That's a lot of information from one statement: I'm arrogant. And this openness, but I can feel it in my, this relax, because that's what it does. It says, oh, yeah, that happened to you. Validate it. Open. It is my intent to be kind. It is my intent to be flexible. It is my intent to forgive myself. That then becomes a directive in this 4 million bits of information per second that changes the whole outcome or end result, or motivating information, which leads to a different behavior. I freeze, and let me say, I freeze less. I'm not in that freeze for like extended period of time, or I'm aware that I'm freezing while I'm there. It's like, oh, here it is. I'm in it. That's another validation. This happens again, and this movement integration of the trauma into real life situations, into my power, and on the sides of the accountability tree, on one side is power and the other side is choice, where that actually manifests. My power and my choice start to manifest in a way that I didn't have before, with the information simply coming from the trauma and me blaming myself. I'm stupid, I'm just something wrong with me, which let no information can come in from that place. Me saying it without blame or judgment simply allows in more information. And I find myself making a different choice, because it's all working together in alignment now, because of my willingness to look at my character defects, own them, say that's my truth in the moment without trying to rationalize it, without a story about why am I arrogant. Well, I could tell you why I'm arrogant is because all the other arrogant assholes, you got to be arrogant or you're going to lose. If you get in a fight where arrogance counts, you need a whole bunch of it. That story is not there, and I'm simply experiencing myself in my pain and in my power all at the same time. And my body knows how to integrate this information for change, for manifestation automatically. I like that word, automatically. How do you change your life? I have no idea. And it happens in this process. That was a mouthful, huh?
What I was thinking is that, and every time I go through that process, I generate a new feeling state that's
Yes.
in alignment with the outcome of the process.
Yes.
And that, so oftentimes when I'm doing this practice and I get to the emotional vibration and I'm present with it, and then I ask myself what I want, oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, I will actually ask the part of my body that's most intensely vibrating with that energy to tell me what it wants.
Right.
And then a word just shows up.
Yep.
I say that word comes from that experience. I don't know, but it seems to be that way. And it's usually something like, I want peace, I want joy, I want ease, I want comfort. And so I set my intention, I intend to experience ease. And now we're starting to add, no matter what. I intend to experience ease no matter what. And then something happens.
Yeah.
You know, that in the Middle Ages, they called it alchemy. Something alchemical is happening because it involves all three aspects of myself. They're all working together. They're producing this state of feeling. And then my body or my mind goes, oh, I like this.
Yes.
How do I get more?
They called it alchemical because they didn't have the pharmacological clinical terms for what's happening internally, like serotonin, norepinephrine, cortisoids, adrenaline, and the effects of these chemicals on our affect or presence in the world. Adrenaline serves purpose. Adrenaline is for you to not think or feel and act in your own best interest in a crisis situation, acute situation, where thinking is a disadvantage, where feeling is a disadvantage. So the reaction part, brainstem, midbrain, boom, this is how you survive. And it's like you realize it moments after it happened, because that's the power of our survival mechanism. That's what it's for. Things in my life, relational things in my life as life-threatening or that I needed to survive. And it could be somebody saying, I love you, without me like, well, wait a minute, whoa, okay, what does that mean? It's like, you need me to do something right now? What do you want from me? It's like all that stuff instead of receiving, I love you. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so the alchemy here is that we're turning the lead of fear, resistance into the gold of joy or choice, whichever word we want to say. And we don't, the inquiring mind can't explain it.
Exactly.
And as I've said, so I intend to not understand this. It's like, I don't need to understand it.
Right.
I don't mean I intend to. I'm willing to not understand.
Yes.
I'm willing to not know. You know, maybe someday a satisfactory mind answer will show up, a conceptual answer, maybe not. It doesn't matter to me, because what I know is that this practice yields the results that I want every time.
Yeah. And as
Or
you were
I
saying
should
that,
say consistently. Sorry, John, go ahead.
as you were saying that, I was thinking that we're building the capacity for the new language in this process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's how we each of us contribute to the evolution of the species and our capacity for deeper self-awareness and self-compassion.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, got to do the work, got to do the hard work.
Yeah.
And as we've noted before, I mean, many people have done this same kind of work for centuries before us, millennia before us. It's been going on since the dawn of humanity. The minute we became aware of ourselves and we became aware that we could die and that we would die, that was when this inquiry was born.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
now,
it's been around for a long time.
and now, like you say, in the modern era, information came to us about physiology,
Mm-hmm.
psychology, that even the mystics didn't have access to.
Right.
So we get to just incorporate this new information into the same work,
Mm-hmm.
same practice, because the practices are still the same.
Here's an example of that. When Christ said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do," he said, "Oh my God, I got a lot of wounded children around me that don't know it, and they're coming from their wound instead of being present in the moment. Because if they were
Right.
present in the moment, it would be different. They know not what they do." And now we're batting around terms like reticular activating system, survival mechanism, brainstem, midbrain, but
Childhood trauma.
pharmacological terms, which are explaining the same thing.
Exactly.
Yes. So.
But I think that information, at least for me, is gratifying, because the more I see how this works, the more complete the mosaic becomes.
Yes.
And
Wow. Well put.
that's just joyful. That's all. It's not necessary. It's just joyful.
Yes. Yeah. 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 Mosaic. I like that. I use a constellation of energy, of experience, of situations coming together in one moment. Constellation of things from the trauma based on my truth. I'm mean. There's a constellation of things going on beneath my that I can't even keep up with, because that part of my brain is 4 bits of information per second. So the little bit I can glean from my rational brain is, and all I want to do is say, wow. I mean, that's my wow. Let's do that again.
Right.
Whatever that was, let's do that again.
Right. Well, the other thing is that that the thinking mind, the conceptualizing mind, is always commenting on something that's already happened.
Yes.
So that the conceptualizing mind cannot be present. Only the feeling body can be present.
Good point. Absolutely excellent point. And we access that through our emotional body, not our rational cognitive
Right.
capacity.
Right. But I'll take it one step further, but it's our intuitive capacity that integrates these two so that they actually are pulling together instead
Yes.
of fighting each other.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we
Yes.
noted at the beginning, they can be at war with each other. The mind can stifle the emotional body.
Yes.
So at some point in time, that's either going to lead to chronic disease, or even worse, it can lead to suicide.
Yes.
Or it can lead to integration through the practices that we didn't get taught as children.
Right.
Like we're learning through accountability practice to actually create integration so that there's harmony within rather than disharmony.
Yes.
And it's the intuitive capacity that generates the love that brings us to that work and then supports it.
Mm-hmm.
So that capacity to create an intention, the capacity to notice what I want is intuitive. That's where the intuitive energies are now liberated, because we've created alignment between the emotional body and the thought body. And now that creates the space for the intuitive body to say, okay, kids, we're all pulling together now. What do we want?
Mm-hmm.
Why, I want milk chocolate.
Yeah, Haagen-Dazs.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Because at the bottom of the accountability tree is intentional living.
Intentional.
It's like this is all now through conscious intention. And where does that come from? Now, we don't need to answer that question. I'll just hypothesize it comes from the intuitive body.
Yes. Comes from
And
that unwounded place that was already set in place before we received the trauma.
Exactly.
And the instructions to shut down.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so those with a spiritual bent can say that's also the ground of being. That's the source. Source energy is what we're born identified as.
Yes.
But we're not conscious of it. That's why we have to go through this process.
Yes. Yeah. My grandson isn't conscious that he's exuberant, excited, and surprised at every little detail of life. He just is that.
Right.
And adventures and putting things together and creating an obstacle course so he doesn't have to touch the ground as he goes throughout the kitchen, dining room, living room, extra dining room, kitchen, back to the fireplace. It's like he's not conscious that, I mean, he's not rationalizing that. He's just doing that because it's fun.
Right. He hasn't got that thinking mind that's sitting there and commenting on everything yet.
Yeah.
He am.
He am as I am with him.
Yeah. So this also illustrates for me, this is my Christian background coming through, it just illustrates for me things like Jesus said, unless you become like little children, you can't enter the kingdom.
Yes.
And this is, to me, this is the process of becoming those little children, that innocence, being in touch with that original way that we came into this world.
Mm-hmm.
And allowing that energy to be who we are with all this aging that we've gone through and wisdom and living and all that kind of stuff. It's like when I say I intend to feel joy, peace, ease, comfort, that's what Solomon's feeling in his embodied existence. That's like becoming a little child in the biblical sense.
Yes.
And when I become that, then I'm, again, the biblical term is the kingdom of heaven. But what is that? That's intentional living.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's being the author of my own life. But not in a narcissistic way, but in a genuine way where I'm doing this with you and everybody else that I choose to be with, because it's a lot more fun that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And a lot more powerful.
A lot more powerful. And meaningful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really cool.
So we started the conversation talking about the centrality of the emotional body to this work.
Yeah.
And it's just ironic because we're talking about something that we're talking about feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
we're talking about a dynamic process that's been reduced and separated and broken into all its parts, and we're trying to put the parts together, and they've never been separated.
Right. Well, I was thinking,
Uh-huh.
this is the irony of this stuff. I was thinking that throughout this entire podcast, we are both in a feeling state.
Mm-hmm.
And every once in a while, I would just detach and just feel what's going on in my body, just to remind myself that I'm feeling. Now, my mind brings me into focus on this conversation, but I can develop the habit of checking in with my feeling body without necessarily losing focus.
Yes.
of my thinking body.
Hmm.
And that's really kind of cool. And that's where I'm choosing to head, because I choose to integrate body, mind, soul, and live in awareness of the three of them acting as one.
Yeah. And it happens, I don't know why I'm saying this, bottom up.
It does.
Yeah. They say, any significant social change does not come from the top. It comes from the common people coming together and saying, this is what we want. The top's cool. The top's fine. They got what they want. So to change anything means they got to change what they have, and there's no way it's going to happen. So any significant change, it has come from the bottom up.
It's really hilarious that when I heard you say that, I immediately thought of the chakra system.
Yeah.
And from the first chakra, which is the ground chakra, up to the crown chakra, it's like it's got to go up that way.
Yeah. 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 All the other chakras would be useless if we didn't have that ground.
Right. Exactly. Well, and to translate into this, the language that we're using, the thinking mind is useless without the emotional body.
Well, it is clever.
We'd just be Spock.
Yeah. It is clever. It is logical. It is that.
Right.
And it has also got me to where I found myself wanting to get out of wherever that was into someplace different. So.
Right. I think I talked about it last week. There were times before I found the process there where my mind would be so loud, I literally was trying to find a crowbar to claw my brain out of my head to stop it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's how powerful it is. And
yeah.
I would suggest, this is part of what I'm writing in my book about, I would suggest that all of this is in part because the use of the mind is so young relatively to the human experience, that the rational era of humanity is no more than 500 years old. And so we're just taking baby steps in terms of appreciating the power of the mind to serve authenticity.
Well, yeah. And the power of the mind in the Greco-Roman Western philosophy is rationale, logic. And then if you go to people who are holistic, and the mind, when you say mind, it incorporates all three aspects of who we are. And therein lies the separation. It's not a lot. Don't get me wrong. We've got a lot of really nice technology and things that make life easy. I'm not against that, to creating technology and ways to things that are logical and put these things together that do all these things for us. And socially, mentally, relationally, we're in a lot of trouble.
Well, it appears that the process of evolution requires us to separate these things out before we reintegrate them.
Yeah. And experience them, and then say, whoa, okay, that was cool. That was a good run, but let's reevaluate here.
Right.
And so not to get rid of anything, not to get rid of logic and ration, because it serves. When it's in alignment with the wholeness of who I am, it's inspirational. And think of all the people who created profound things. It came, and they will tell you it came from this place. It's like Einstein was taking a bus home, kicking it, and he looked at a clock and, oh my God, theory of relativity. It's like, oh, wow. So, yeah. And he also said, what do you say? Imagination is more important than knowledge. So that's not a Greco-Roman rational statement coming from what we have considered the most intelligent man in the 20th century.
Yep.
He was highly intuitive.
As not that we're going to get into that now, but as is
Yeah.
just the whole inquiry into quantum physics. It's all,
Yes.
it's evidence of this intuitive quality that's interlaced even in the physical universe.
Yes.
And
Actually, yeah.
again, we're just starting to see what we can resonate with when it comes to that information.
What the possibilities are. Yes.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
Ken Wilber who taught me that this is all about transcending, including, integrating.
Yes.
Everything that came before serves. It's just like the ground chakra thing we were talking about a minute ago. Everything belongs,
Everything
but it's
belongs.
not always integrated, and that's the work that we're working on.
Right.
So that now we go back. Let's close with that poem, John, that you wrote, the I am, because that's the integrative statement.
Yeah. Okay, here goes. I am, you am, we am, that am.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I think that's a wrap.
Okay.
Thank you.
Marty. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank
I
you.
think next week we're going to have a special guest join us, so you want to stay tuned for that and come on back.
Yeah, really. I'm looking forward to that. I'm excited about that.
Yeah. Well, have a great weekend, John.
You too.